alert this busy travel holiday weekend after another known wolf commits a terror attack. So the question is whether what happened over there will bleed into what's happening here. We have some guests with us, national security expert Rebecca Heinrichs and Zuhdi Jasser from the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. Rebecca, first you, U.S. authorities must be working very closely with UK authorities, sharing information. We know that there was this concern on the part of the UK authorities that perhaps somebody was leaking stuff that they shouldn't have about their investigation. But any signs so far that what happened over there could happen here or might happen here?
Of course, there's always a risk that what happened there might happen here. Thankfully, we don't have the same degree of the problems that Europe has. Europe has sort of become a cautionary tale for the United States. The open borders, the flood of migrants coming from war-torn nations, the lack of assimilation in Islamic communities where many individuals are become budding jihadists by listening to their religious leaders and their parents, and they don't see themselves first and foremost as British citizens. They see themselves first and foremost as members of, this great Islamic community, the Ummah, where they take jihadism very extremely seriously. But we don't have that same problem here, but we do have some degree of that problem here. So we need to be on high alert. I thought the president's urging to drive out terrorists in our communities was very important that he gave in Riyadh. Very strong.
However, Zuhdi, we still have the courts questioning his travel restrictions that he wants to put in, and we should emphasize that the UK killer had just been to Libya. He'd been there a couple of times, but he'd just come back from Libya. Libya is one of those failed states. If you Google Libya, you'll find out exactly how failed it is. There's no semblance of a solid centralized government there. That's the reason the president wanted to keep people like the killer that we see there from coming here.
Well, David, it's really not rocket science, and yet while Muslims may be more assimilated in America, I think we're falling down the same slope, but just not as steeply as Europe. And that slope is the lack of willingness, the lack of courage to address the nonviolent precursors. Because right now, all we're focused on is that last moment when they're going to strap the vest on, when they're expressing some element of wanting to kill somebody, be violent. But there are so many obvious signs, precursors before that, that we could be focusing on those 3,500 that are known wolves, as you mentioned, and the few hundred in America that have gone to Syria or Libya and come back. What should we be focusing on? The list is so easy. Are they worried about whining about Islamophobia? Check. Are they anti-Semitic? Check. Are they worried and prefer the Sharia state versus Western democracy? Do they favor or blame, Western democracies for the death of Muslims? It looks like this guy's family and his close community, his mosque, as much as the mosque condemned ISIS, they had anti-Semitic screeds, homophobic screeds. So all of these things are so obvious, and yet we're ignoring them because our politically correct sort of fratricide is ignoring the ideologies.
And Rebecca, to Zuhdi's point, we don't want to be reactive as what happened in Great Britain. We want to be proactive. We want to stop the terror from happening before it happens. And one of the ways to do that, according to the president anyway, even though the courts deny that his intentions are sincere, is by preventing people from these failed states from coming and visiting us. It's clear that anybody, you don't go to Libya, a failed state, which is in many parts run by terrorists, for a vacation. You just don't.
That's exactly right. And Dr. Jasser is exactly right. So that's one, of course, that's just one method that we can use to try to prevent some of this from happening. But you've got to get to the root of the ideology that Dr. Jasser is talking about here, too. And so, and again, the law enforcement tools that we have are not the problem. It comes from the political class. Does the political class understand the nature of the threat? If it understands that human beings are not just motivated by, the material, by poverty, if they have an education or not. They're motivated by this higher calling, finding meaning in life. And a lot of these young budding jihadists are finding that in their religious leaders and texts and their parents. And so we have to be in tune to that.
Well, and clearly we saw way back in 9/11, Zuhdi, that a lot of the terrorists came from upper middle class backgrounds. It's not poverty that drives them. It's ideology. And it's also the idea that the terrorists are winning. They spin this notion that every terror attack means a win for the Islamic State. That's why the president uses now new rhetoric that we certainly didn't hear from the Obama administration. Some people say it's simplistic. Other people say it's right on. Let me just play some of the president's tape on that and get your reaction.
I won't call them monsters because they would like that term. They would think that's a great name. I will call them from now on losers because that's what they are.
Losers. It sounds so simplistic, but does he hit a point?
Oh, absolutely. These radicals divide the world into the land of Islam and the land of war. So they're in a war. We need to be at war and take the war to them. Muslims, especially in the West, we live in a laboratory where we can fight these ideas, these theopolitical ideas, where sadly there's some studies that show that more British Muslims are signing up with ISIS to go to Syria and Libya than with their own military. That's the battle for the soul of Islam, which is, do you feel more loyalty to Western secular states, or do you feel more loyalty to the jihad? And as much as it was great to see President Trump take it to the belly of the beast in Saudi Arabia, you know, starting a counterterrorism center in Riyadh is sort of like starting a counter-cocaine center in Colombia. We need to do this in the West. We need to have huge centers built by Muslims, led by Muslims, to fight this ideology within our mosques about loyalty and allegiance to Western democracy.
Well, Zuhdi, I think you're absolutely right, but at the same time, I thought that those were pretty profound words when he was speaking truth to power in Saudi Arabia. I know they felt very uncomfortable when he was saying that, but he had the guts to say it. Thank you very much, Zuhdi and Rebecca. We appreciate you coming in. Have a good weekend.